Well, good evening, everyone. And as always, a very warm welcome to anyone who may be joining us online or who will be doing so in the days ahead. As mentioned, the title of our class tonight is The Role of a Guru in One's Spiritual Search. And as most of us know, the subject of the Guru is one that we repeat each year at Convocation, not only because of its supreme importance in the role of the devotee in one's spiritual search, but also because of the unique and personal and endearing nature of the Guru and of our relationship with him as the manifest or materialized image of God. Or as our own Guru, the Guru of Self-Realization Fellowship, Yogoda Satsanga Society, Paramahansa Yogananda often said, the Guru is the speaking voice of silent God. So more on that aspect a little later. But to start with, I thought I would read a well-known tribute to the Guru from the Songs of Kabir, this anthology of poems from the famous 15th century Indian master, translated by the similarly esteemed Rabindranath Tagore, and which seeks to describe the sublime and transcendental nature of the Guru. It's almost like a meditation by itself. And you may have heard this before. And Kabir wrote, "It is the mercy of my true Guru that has made me to know the unknown. I have learned from him how to walk without feet, to see without eyes, to hear without ears, to drink without mouth, to fly without wings. I have brought my love and my meditation into the land where there is no sun and moon, nor day and night. Without eating, I have tasted of the sweetness of nectar, and without water, I have quenched my thirst. Where there is the response of delight, there is the fullness of joy. Before whom can that joy be uttered?" Kabir says, the Guru is great beyond words, and great is the good fortune of the disciple. You may have heard also how the great sannyasi and teacher Adi Shankaracharya, who our Guru once referred to as India's greatest philosopher, taught that the three greatest blessings that a soul can receive on earth are first, birth in a human body. Although I was thinking when I first heard that, I think we all question how great a blessing that, that can be at times, especially as we know all too well, the challenges that we go through in these forms are those that we love and have to go through so many physical challenges. But the reason is that because within this form, unlike the animals, we have those divine chakras, those centers of life and consciousness in the spine and brain that Brother Chidananda referred to and drew us toward in the meditation we had with him yesterday, through which the soul reawakens unto itself and experiences God. And then the second blessing is a deep longing to understand the purpose of life, what life is all about, and to have the desire to actually want to experience that God. And then the third blessing is what we are talking about tonight, a true Guru, a divine incarnation. And in fact, Shankara said once that this last blessing is really the greatest of them all, that he said the greatest blessing in all the three worlds is a true Guru, that rarest of human beings. And why is it so? It's so because the Guru is one who knows God. And he's one who has walked the path that we are walking now all the way to the end. Our own master said once, master meeting one who is master of himself, he said, "I have lived all your lives." He knows the path, he understands. And so through their oneness with Spirit and their omnipresence, a true Guru can show us the way how to open those divine centers of life and consciousness in the spine and brain, that we might awaken that sleeping soul within each one of us and attain that same liberation, that same self-realization. In fact, the same Swami Shankara wrote some further beautiful lines himself once about the greatness of the Guru, when he said, "No known comparison exists in the three worlds for a true Guru. If the philosopher's stone be assumed as truly such, It can only turn iron into gold, not into another philosopher's stone. The venerated teacher, on the other hand, creates equality with himself in the disciple who takes refuge at his feet. The guru is therefore peerless, nay, transcendental. And these three great blessings of a human body, the desire to know truth, and a true guru who can reveal truth to us, refers likewise to the three main stages of evolution that we, as the soul, pass through. And the first stage, our guru says, is when for unimaginable numbers of existences in various forms of mineral, plant, and animal, and then for similarly unimaginable numbers of incarnations as a human being, the soul learns and evolves primarily through the law of karma, through a continuous, seemingly never-ending cycle of pain and disappointment interspersed with a few pleasures that themselves don't last because they also are conditioned by the ever-changing nature of life. And that cycle of pain and disappointment with a few pleasures, and then pain and disappointment and a few pleasures, and then pain and disappointment and a few pleasures, and then pain, and we all know, are familiar with this. It continues until we're told, Guruji says, until the soul finally, it starts to stir, and it cries out and says, enough. There has to be something more to life, to all of this. And haven't we all, or didn't we all at one point have a similar awakening, a similar stirring within ourselves? And then the second stage is when those thoughts and questions, that yearning to know what life is all about, become strong enough and sincere enough, then as we probably also experienced, each one of us in one form or another, the divine hears that plea. And usually the first response is the divine sends us a book of some kind about the true meaning of life, or about the nature of the soul, or better yet, about reincarnation, and that usually gets our attention. Or we stumble upon a podcast about metaphysics, or a friend tells us about an interesting lecture, and so forth. And usually our very first response from one of those contexts is, this is what I've been looking for. It makes sense. This is what I've been seeking all my life. But then there comes that one final stage where that initial intellectual or superficial stimulation of going from one lecture to another, or one teacher to another, or trying a little bit of this and a little bit of that, it no longer satisfies, because it can only take us so far. That can only give us so much fulfillment. And so when our yearning for something more, for this third stage, is stronger still, to really know, then God sends us that final greatest blessing of all, a true guru, a divine one who is one with God and is appointed by God. God chooses that guru for us to lead us back through that guru's teachings and blessings, off of that endless wheel of birth and rebirth to the realization of our own divinity. In fact, our master said so beautifully once, the guru is the awakened God, awakening the sleeping God in others. Some of our older, not old, but older timers will likely remember one of our former monks who has since passed away, Brother Turiyananda. Yes, and who lived and served for many years at our SRF Lake Shrine. And if so, you may remember him telling this story, how after he came upon our Guru's teachings, and before he became an SRF monastic, he said a well-known saint from India, Swami Ramdas, was visiting, I think it was Geneva, where he was living at the time. And it was just a couple of years or so after our Guru's passing in Mahasamadhi. And the same Swami Ramdas and his companions came to the US after that, and in fact were hosted at our international headquarters in November of 1954. And so anyway, Brother Turiyananda said he went to this talk all excited to meet this Swami. And afterwards, he went forward to greet him, who surprised Brother Turiyananda by saying, before any words had been exchanged, Swami Ram Das said to him, "What are you doing here?" He said, "You have a guru," having probably intuitively realized that Brother Turiyananda had already found his master. And so Brother Turiyananda said, he said to Swami Ram Das, "Well, no, sir, you see, my guru is dead." To which Swami Ram Das replied, "No, your guru is living. You are dead." Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the spiritual path. So, meaning, of course, that a true guru is ever living. His consciousness is ever awake in God, but that the soul consciousness of the disciple is still dead or sleeping, waiting to be awakened as it is in these great masters. And so that conversation, Brother Turiyananda said that conversation helped set him straight. It wasn't long after that he said he came to America and joined his guru's ashram. But now sending the guru to us is one thing. Yes, the subject tonight is the role of a guru in one's spiritual search, in our spiritual search. But that's just part of it. Because we have a role as well. And that's to actually follow what the guru says. I didn't mean that to be funny, but it's there's a few laughters, and it's probably good that we can laugh about that, as we should. But this is when the real spiritual path begins. In fact, I thought we could just as aptly name our class tonight the role of the disciple in one's spiritual search. And this dual role and responsibility refers to what is known, and as we know, as the guru-disciple relationship that is at the heart and is really the essence of the spiritual path. You know, some years back, don't know why, but I had this thought that if I was ever marooned on a deserted island somewhere off in the South Pacific with, you know, the palm trees gently blowing in the wind and coconuts and papayas and mangoes everywhere, and I thought I might as well make it as inviting as possible if it should ever, you know, have to manifest. But I thought if I was ever stranded like this and I could only have one book with me, out of all the books in the entire world, without a doubt, no hesitation, it would be our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. It's a classic. It's a spiritual classic in every sense of the word. It's like itself a scripture, which offers up its meanings and inspiration to us time after time after time. And interestingly enough, how does that tome of close to 500 pages of every kind of sign and wonder and miracle and experience and truth of all kinds start off with this one sentence? The characteristic features of Indian culture have long been a search for ultimate verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. It's his very first sentence that our master penned in his autobiography. And we know as well how the first several chapters that follow are all woven around the same theme and of our guru's search for his own master who might lead him to God. But I thought if we take a pause and take a step back for a moment and look at that sentence more closely, we notice something very interesting. Our guru didn't say the concomitant guru-disciple relationship, which is the way that sacred relationship is normally referred to. Instead, he must have intentionally reversed that word order. I don't know if he was putting a so-called Easter egg, hiding an Easter egg in there for us to find at one time that would reveal again, spell out this responsibility or role that we have in this equation. But I think it's more of a question and more likely and more beautifully as any true guru would. A true guru never puts himself forward, but honors and elevates and makes it all about the disciple, that he, at God's behest, has come to love and serve and protect and lead, not to himself, but to God alone. Thinking further now for a moment about the role of the Guru, you might remember where our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, said on one of his recorded talks that, in a sense, God is very shy, that he doesn't think much of himself. And he even went a bit further once and said figuratively that God has an inferiority complex. And Brother Kamalananda referred to this briefly the other night in his talk. And when I first heard that, I thought, this is not a good thing. You know? On the one side, God is shy and has an inferiority complex. And here we are on the other side, we're likely to have a guilt complex and feel unworthy and avoid God. And so I thought, this is a bad combination. But in a way, this is the role of the Guru. He's like a divine matchmaker, so to speak, and brings the devotee and God together. In a sense, he comes to us and says, God really loves you. I mean, it's everywhere in his teachings, right? And we say, really? Yeah. Me? Yeah, really? Wow. God loves me. And then he goes to God. And he says, Lord, that devotee, he really wants to know you, or, she really thinks of you a lot. And God says, really? Me? Master says, yeah, really. Okay, so this is admittedly a rather simplistic or mundane way of looking at this relationship, but at the same time, I hold that this is the Guru. It's somebody that gets us. It's somebody that understands us. It's somebody that knows us from the inside out. He knows what we need. He knows what we need at any given time. He's there for us and knows how we feel. And beyond that, I also hold that the Guru, is madly in love with us, because he sees and adores us for who and what we always have been and always will be, a divine soul, a child of God, a unique expression of God. I was reminded also of, like with Brother Chirananda, one of our former monks, Brother Premamoy, who some of you would have also known. He said something once. He said, one day we'll get to the point where we'll realize that not only do God and Guru love us, but that they actually like us as well. Isn't that is fantastic. It's almost better in a sense, And so the Guru loves us and likes us unconditionally and forever. There's a most beautiful and sublime and accurate description of precisely this type of divine love and friendship that the Guru has for the disciple, meaning for us, that some of you may have heard before. It's entitled The Guru's Love. And it reads, you may come to him for a few seconds, then go away and do whatever you will. His love is unchanging. See if I can get through this. You may deny him to himself and to yourself, then curse him to any who will listen. His love is unchanging. You may become the most despised of creatures, then return to him. His love is unchanging. Go where you will, do what you will, stay however long you will, and come back to him. His love is unchanging. Abuse others, abuse yourself, abuse him, and come back to him. His love is unchanging. He will never criticize you. He will never minimize you. He will never desert you, because to him you are everything, and he himself is nothing. He will never deceive you. He will never ridicule you. He will never fail you, because to him you are God nature to be served, and he is your servant. No matter what befalls, no matter what you become, he awaits you always. He knows you. He serves you. He loves you. His love for you in this changing world is unchanging. His love, beloved, is unchanging. Some of you will recall also how Swami Sri Yukteswar, our Guru's Guru, said to him once, "I will be your friend from now to eternity, whether you are on the lowest mental plane or on the highest plane of wisdom." And then how he added, "I will be your friend even if you should err, for then you will need my friendship more than at any other time." And so again, this sublime relationship answers a most, I think, perhaps the most personal and private and fundamental part and longing of our being, and that is to find that perfect love, that one true friend who will never let us down. And the point as it relates to our subject, I think, is that once we experience that kind of love, that kind of friendship, then we can relax. Like that class from Brother Govindananda the other night. It's another aspect, how we can relax in meditation. We can relax on the spiritual path. We sort of get that need out of the way, so to speak, and can then move beyond looking always and grasping always for somebody to love us. And we actually start looking to give love to everyone in the world. And as a result, we find more love than we could ever have imagined in return. And again, with regards to our spiritual search, experiencing this kind of unconditional acceptance frees up a tremendous amount of energy and attention where we no longer, I want to use the word, we no longer waste time or feel the need any longer to hide ourselves from God or Guru or to hide from ourselves. Because we felt that love, we felt that acceptance, we have that knowledge. And instead we start getting busy dealing with the faults that we felt defined us. We start eliminating them in a positive, even fun kind of way, knowing that they're just temporary coverings that are preventing more of who we already are, the soul, to shine forth in its innate and divinely beautiful way. And I think, in a sense, we don't meditate or do all these things and follow spiritual principles and practices to become something we're not. We meditate and follow spiritual principles and practices to become or remember who and what we already are. Does that make sense? And as a result, we're finally able to more earnestly and effectively take up our role in the spiritual search. Many or most of you have heard where our Guru said that in the search for God, how 25% is the devotee's effort, 25% is the Guru's effort, and 50% is the grace of God. I know a lot of people don't like math, but I think we all get that formula. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, 75% of what it will take to reclaim our lost divinity is taken by God and Guru. However, and it's not really fine print, but our Guru did elaborate on this once. I unfortunately found this looking for material for this class. I'm sorry. Our Guru said, the aspirant should not be tempted into complacency, however, waiting to be moved by the spirit of the blessings and grace. For he said, it is the catalyst of the devotee's effort that makes the formula work. So in other words, it's our 25% that draws from or in full that greater 75%. And again, in terms of our topic, what this means is that a large part of the Guru's role or job in our spiritual search is to motivate and inspire us to make that effort and to do our share. Our beloved third president, Sri Dayamata, once said about this. She said, during our years with Guruji, I recall how as we made efforts to improve, he would raise the bar just a little higher. As soon as we thought we had succeeded in pleasing him by reaching that level, he would raise it again, instilling in us the confidence that we could take the next step. In such ways, he urged us to go beyond our self-imposed limitations and even beyond dependence upon his personality, which reflected so many of the endearing qualities of the divine. And she went on, it is when we understand the purpose of the Guru in our life that we begin to see more clearly how he works with our consciousness to bring out our divine soul qualities. And she said, sometimes devotees have the expectation that because they have been drawn to a God-united Guru, their path will be smooth and free of difficulties, and the blissful realization of God will come easily. Anybody ever thought that? But she went on, the Guru does indeed remove many karmic obstacles from our lives. And I bet if Ma would say he removes many karmic obstacles from our lives. But because his goal, she said, is to transform our whole being, he also seeks to motivate us to stretch our capacities, to draw out fully the faith, understanding, and spiritual strength of which we are capable. You know, once during our Guru's lifetime, he was no doubt raising the bar, perhaps uncomfortably so, with one of the early disciples who must have run out of excuses. And as a last line of defense, he said, well, it's easy for you. You're a master. And when I heard that, I thought, I mean, that sounds like a reasonable argument. But as the story goes, our Guru did not stop and say, what was that? Thank you. I forgot. What was I thinking? Of course. Wow. I blanked out for a moment. Yeah, I'm a master, and oh yeah, that's right. You go on in your own little weak way, and don't worry about it. No, instead, and we were told in a rather booming voice, he replied, what made me a master? And he added, all souls are equal. The only difference between you and me is that I made the effort. I showed God that I love him, and he came to me. And this is really encouraging. The only difference, he said, between Guru and disciple is that the Guru has made the effort. Meaning the difference is not one of kind. With respect, we're the same. The difference is only one of degree. And again, that's our Guru's mission in our spiritual search, to raise us to that same level. So with his 25%, the Guru guides us, trains us, pushes us, disciplines us, encourages us, and ultimately blesses us in order to help us ultimately make that same effort, all toward, as we read in the beginning, to create equality with himself, that we might attain our own self-realization. And if we take our discipline in the right spirit, so to speak, and as we do our part, our 25% to the best of our ability, then God and Guru will more than do their share. In fact, our Guru also said once, to those who will reach one hand up to heaven, I will drop both of my hands to lift them up. And truly, he has not only dropped down both hands, but he has also, as we know, dropped down or left us a way to daily lift ourselves up into his living and guiding presence. And this is through the teachings and instructions that he left behind. In fact, many of us know how he said, when I am gone, the teachings will be the Guru. He said, through the teachings, you will be in tune with me and the great Gurus who sent me. Again, not that he is gone, he's omnipresent, he's ever living, he's ever awake in spirit to help and guide us. But through the teachings, these phenomenal, incomparable SRF YSS lessons, and through all our other gurus' books and recordings, they give us the means through study and practice of his words and teachings to attune ourselves with his consciousness, and he said, with the consciousness of the great ones who sent him. It's the way we can lift up our one hand and connect with his two hands and draw forth that 25% of his blessings and the 50% grace of God. You know, once somebody asked our third president, Sri Dayamata, in a satsang, Ma, how does one get in tune with the Guru? And in typical fashion, her answer was so simple and to the point, but as was also typical, it was full of profound truth and practical wisdom. And she said, my dear, you want to get in tune with the Guru? She said, that's easy. Just do what he says. It's brilliant. It's obvious. We make it so complicated. How do I get in tune with the Guru? And I'll never make it. I'm terrible. And Ma just says, just do what he says. Do what he says to the best of our ability. Our Guru said once, do your best and give it to God. And every day, every week, every month, every year, we try to, that's what we do. That's what we all do. That's what we have done. That's what we will always do. We'll continue to do. We try to make that best a little bit better. Knowing that in the end, at the end of this incredible, extraordinary life, that will just fall into our Guru's arms, and he will usher us into that land beyond. He's not a tyrant. He's our bestest friend. He's our greatest well-wisher. You know, talking about the SRF YSS lessons, I remember something humorous, also very true, that Brother Anandamoy said at a convocation like this years ago. And he mentioned how if you add it all up, you figure out the subscription cost of each lesson, and you add in the postage, and you arrived, he said, at the most nominal figure imaginable. And he said, one might think, wow, this is really hardly anything to pay for this. And then in his inimitable way, he drilled everybody with his eyes. And he said, you have no idea what you paid to get these lessons. And we likewise have no idea. It's probably as well we don't know. And so in addition to providing detailed instruction in the techniques of meditation and how to live every aspect, really, of the spiritual life, studying the Guru's teachings with devotion, again, puts us in attunement with him, in attunement with his presence, with his omnipresence. As he himself said, if we study those lessons deeply, with calmness and concentration, and with a receptive heart and mind, he said, there is an actual transmission of consciousness from the Guru to the disciple through the vibratory power of those truths. In other words, through the Om vibration, in a sense similar to how Jesus told his disciples that after he left, he would send the Comforter or Holy Ghost, through which they would know all things and which would bring all things to remembrance. And what also is so interesting, I think, about this statement from our Guru that when he is gone, the teachings will be the Guru, is that while we all have the same lessons, we have the same books, we have the same recordings and so on, is that within that shared framework, the Guru at the same time is able to guide each of us individually through those shared teachings according to our own particular nature according to what each one of us is going through or what we need at that particular time in our journey. You know, it's said that out of all the billions on this planet, no two have the same thumbprint, not even identical twins. And so each soul has its own unique and equally special relationship with the divine and its own unique expression of the divine that the Guru works with the disciple to bring out, to bring forth. And this is the Guru-disciple relationship in action. And that spark of divinity within each one of us will unfold through the Guru's inner guidance, through our intuition, as we make those instructions a living part of our consciousness and a living part of our everyday routine and practice. On the DVD entitled In His Presence, our former president, Sri Mrilini Ma, similarly spoke about how each disciple got, and she said, still gets, a very individualized training from the Guru. Because of, again, how she said that each devotee is unique and at a different stage of development or with particular needs at any given time. And on this point, she said further, each disciple, because he or she was getting what they needed from the Guru, and because the Guru was drawing out of that disciple the soul qualities that the disciple needed to express in order to go closer to God, that gave an intimate communion, an intimate attunement, an absolute unity between the soul of Guru and the soul of God that gave each disciple who had any receptivity the feeling, he knows me. He knows everything that I am. He knows what I need at any given moment. He's always reaching out just at the right time to help me. And she said, that is what gives that feeling to each disciple who is attuned, that feeling, I am special to God. I am special to Guru. And she added, because you are. Because we are. And so all this is what is meant by that quote in the beginning where our master said that the Guru is the speaking voice of silent God. And where in this quote we just heard how Mrilini Ma said there is absolute unity between the soul of Guru and the soul of God, so that he can be that speaking voice for each one of us. And so as Sri Gyanamata, that great woman disciple of our Guru, said once, she said, we should say to ourselves and think to ourselves, he came for me. At the Guru, he came for me. And he comes not just once, but as many times, as many lives as we need until his work and our work is finished and we are fully awake and reunited with God. As our Guru wrote in his poem, God's Boatman, he said, oh, I will come again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, so long as I know one stray brother or sister is left behind. You know, once the monks were sitting all together with Mrilini Ma, and she was reading aloud this poem to us, and after she finished this line with which I just read, how our master said he would come if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, at that moment she paused and she looked kind of slowly at each one of us and she said, but let's not add to his burden and be the last one. And there was a certain kind of uneasiness in the room at that moment. I think more than a few of us averted our gaze a bit from her, not, certain just how true that might be. I let my mind, kind of imagine once how this would play out if we were all on that boat, and everyone else, in other words. And we were the last one. Everyone's on the boat, and we're like on the beach, we're just like crawling. You can make it. I'm coming, you know. Or worse yet, I thought, what if like we're just about ready to board, and then it's like, just one more curry dinner. I'll just be a minute, you know. And everybody, oh no. So let's not, for whatever reason. Well, even if we are the last one, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. But look again, the role of the guru in our life. Come a trillion. These are not just words. That is not just poetry. That's our guru. He can write that kind of poetry because he has that kind of love and means it. That he'll come a trillion times, as long as one stray brother or sister is left behind. We know our guru is going to come many times. You know, I heard once this Swami Vivekananda, somebody asked him, said, Swamiji, will you be returning to earth? And he said, I think so. He said, you know, some of us say, oh, when I can't wait to get out of here, and I'm never coming back, and this and that. And here's Swami Vivekananda said, yes, I will come again, because he said, I've fallen in love with mankind. So these are our kind. That's my kind of guru. So that's the guru I have, that he'll come again and again. And so that's the role that the guru has. But again, the role of the disciple is to do all we can to ease that burden. As Mary Ma said, you know, enough curry, enough whatever, and to cooperate as much as we can with our guru's work for us, with his loving training. And beyond that, if he allows and we are able to take some of that burden, to share some of that load through prayer, through trying to be as the best example we can be for him, or particularly through Guru Seva, by sharing the load, the burden of his work for the benefit of all. And so what all this naturally creates in the disciple as we move forward on the path, and which is the last point we'll take up tonight, is an abiding sense of loyalty and one-pointedness to the Guru and to his teachings, because it's ultimately this quality of loyalty that enables him to lead us most quickly and safely and surely ever onward and upward to our divine goal. In fact, loyalty is so great that our Guru called it the highest law. The highest law. We know it forms the basis of any true love or friendship. And as it relates to the role of the Guru and the role of the disciple, our Master himself gave the following illustration. He said, if you have a disease, you go to a doctor, and he gives you medicine to cure your ailment. You take the medicine home and use it according to the doctor's instructions. When your friends come to visit you and learn the nature of your illness, each one is likely to exclaim, oh, I know all about that disease. You must certainly try such and such remedy. And our Guru said, should 10 persons give you 10 different remedies, and you try them all, your chances for cure are doubtful. And he said, the same principle underlies the importance of loyalty to the Guru's instruction. He said, do not mix spiritual remedies. And then he added, many persons worry about becoming narrow-minded even before they learn to become balanced and loyal. Superficial seekers, in their wish to appear broad-minded, indiscriminately absorb differing ideas without first distilling the essence of truth within them by realization. The result, he said, is a spiritually weak, diluted consciousness. Though I regard lovingly all true religious paths and all true spiritual teachers, you see that I am one-pointedly loyal to my own. And he concluded, and this is him talking to us. He said, I can help you more if you are not diluting your forces. Attunement with the Guru comes through 100% loyalty to him and his associates and activities, through willing obedience to his counsel, whether verbal or written instruction, through visualizing him in the spiritual eye, and through unconditional devotion. In the souls of those who are in tune with him, the Guru can establish a temple of God. Mrilini Ma posed an interesting question about this once, when she said that when we are not 100% loyal, she asked rhetorically here, isn't that in essence doubting the Guru? It's an interesting thought. And she went on, if we accept the spiritual path and a Guru, and we say, you are my Guru, and yet we go about gathering bits and pieces from other teachers, are we not, she said, in essence saying to our Guru, I don't think that you have given me enough. I don't think what you have given me is complete. And she ended and said, to me, it is to doubt the Guru, to doubt his ability to take us to God. I similarly remember Brother Nandamoy again saying once how on the spiritual path, how if a test comes along or if some instruction from the Guru's teaching seems too difficult or is something we do not particularly like, he said there's a temptation to say, oh, I don't have to put up with that. I'll look for somebody else. I'll look for an easier teacher. And so this point can seem like a harsh one, like it's taking away our freedom, when it's really helping us to gather and focus all of our forces in order to not dilute them in the short season of this life, and in order that we might attain our ultimate freedom. And so when we have the right kind of sincerity and humility and loyalty and one-pointed focus, we then fulfill our role as the disciple. And then the role of the Guru in our spiritual search, you might say, reaches its final stage as well, where because of our receptivity, the Guru can help us in the highest and most metaphysical way and pour all the blessings of God into our lives and consciousness. Our master said once, as soon as God is convinced that you are in earnest and nothing can turn you away from him, then through the Guru, he gives you the final realization. The Guru transmits to you the light of God that flows through him. And again, this is the ultimate role of the Guru in our spiritual search, to transmit the light of God to us. And he went on and said, perhaps you thought you would never know such a blessing. That supreme experience I received from my Guru. He gave me by his touch what I could not attain by the power and effort of my meditations alone. And talking further about the divine power uniquely transmitted by the Guru, he wrote, in the early years of my spiritual search, I was blessed to have frequent association with saintly souls whose God consciousness transported my consciousness into supernal realms. But he said, it was not until I met my own God-ordained Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and received initiation from him, that I understood fully the transforming power of the sacred Guru-disciple tradition. Baptized in a radiance as of 1,000 suns, my whole being was blissfully enwrapped in God's love and secured in the care of Guru's wisdom. And he said, the Kriya Yoga sadhana imparted to me at that Diksha was the pearl of great price with which all doors to the divine presence would be opened. And this refers now to the sacred Kriya Yoga ceremony, which many of you will be joyously participating in tomorrow, and the receiving of the specific technique of Kriya Yoga, which is given at the time of formal initiation into this path, and the formal establishing of the sacred covenant and relationship between guru and disciple and guru, and through the blessing of God. I remember once our current president, Brother Chidananda, saying how somebody asked him once who he received his Kriya initiation from, meaning which minister officiated at the ceremony. And as can often be the case, Brotherji's answer was not one we might expect, but it always lifts you up into a higher state of consciousness and understanding. He said, "You know who I received my Kriya initiation from?" He said, "Paramahansa Yogananda," which is the truth, and which is the same truth for each one of us who have already received that sacred initiation. It's the same truth for all of you who will be receiving it tomorrow. And it's the same truth for all who will receive it for all time to come. Because it is Paramahansa Yogananda, the guru of Self-Realization Fellowship, Yogoda Satsanga Society, who is giving that spiritual blessing, that baptism of light on behalf of God Himself. And when combined with our faithful practice of that Kriya technique, and as we follow to the best of our ability that Kriya Yoga path, He can and will introduce us in the end to what He once called the infinite or cosmic guru, God Himself. And so, to sum up the role of a guru in one's spiritual search, our master said, when you are steadfast in the principles of the guru-disciple relationship, the spiritual path becomes very easy. You cannot then go astray. No matter how delusion tries to pull you away, the master, who has experienced God, knows your trouble and will help you to steady yourself on the path again. That is what the guru does for you if you are in tune with him. So now, before we close, let's practice for a few minutes a method of attunement with the guru that he gave us, and which is yet another important role that the guru has in one's spiritual search, and that is to bless and reinforce our efforts in meditation. And a few words on this before we practice. He said, deeply meditating disciples should concentrate on their guru or meditate with him, if possible. He said, during meditation, the spiritual vibration of a great master silently works on lesser yogis who may be meditating with him or who are in tune with him, regardless of distance. And here he says, it is sufficient for a disciple to think strongly of his guru before meditation. He will then find his meditation on God to be reinforced by the Lord's power flowing through the direct, tangible channel of the guru. So first we'll think of the guru as being near, and then we'll meditate on that thought and on his image. And then before we close, we'll ask him any question we might have that we would like answered. Our guru said, those who are spiritually advanced do in fact meditate with the guru by visualizing him in the spiritual eye and tuning in with him, whether or not they are in his physical presence. And our guru once said, to those who think me near, I will be near. So let's begin our practice by sitting in the meditation posture, closing our eyes, lifting the gaze to the point between the eyebrows, opening our heart, and then inhale, tense the body. Exhale. For a few moments, relax and allow ourselves to enter into the presence, the omnipresence of our ever-living Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. As he said, strongly visualize his form and image at the Kutastha or Christ Consciousness Center. And then as we continue to visualize his image, we can combine that by silently affirming and talking to him with words such as these from our heart. Master, Guru, friend, you said you promised that if I think you near, you will be near. I am thinking of you, my Guru, at this moment. Only you. Be with me. Help me to know, help me to feel, help me to realize that as I think you near, you are near. Help me to feel your presence right here, right now, at this very moment. And now with our eyes still closed and holding on to whatever presence or nearness of the Guru we might feel, listen as I read his words that he also gave to us, and then we'll practice the second part of our brief meditation exercise. He said, a disciple residing far away from the Guru may practice a spiritual method of communion. The Guru, one with God, is present everywhere, including the wisdom center, the point between the eyebrows of all men. At the end of meditation each day, the disciple should concentrate at the point between the eyebrows and visualize his Guru. Thinking of him with love and devotion, the disciple should ask the questions he wants answered. If visualization of and concentration on the Guru are deep, the Chela will invariably receive silent answers to his questions in the form of accruing inner perceptions. In this way, the advanced disciple can contact the Guru even after the Master has left the mortal flesh for invisible omnipresence. So as he said, let us concentrate at the point between the eyebrows. And again, continue to visualize the image of our Guru. And now let us ask any question or questions we would like to have answered. And as he promised, if visualization of and concentration on the Guru are deep, we will receive silent answers in the form of inner perceptions, either at this moment or as a perception or understanding that will invariably come to us later on. peace. Amen. So again, this is something we can practice anytime, either, he said, at the end of meditation each day or at the end of any meditation, to attune with him and to receive his guidance. So I wish you all a most beautiful rest of the evening, and of course, as mentioned, many of us will be looking forward to the Divine Kriya ceremonies tomorrow, and then tomorrow evening to again be in the presence of Brother Chidananda, our president, and our Guru's representative on earth. So to close, as we read in the beginning, the Guru is great beyond words, and great is the good fortune of the disciple. Jai Guru.